My goal is simple, is just to take it to the highest level that I can take it to with who I can take it with. You know, I only want to attract people that want to take it there, that are fearless, that are okay with being pushed up against the wall, that are okay with being challenged, fighters that are okay to go down into 12th round, you know what I mean, swimming and doing what we need to do, because those are the moments that I live for. Because in those high intensity moments, when you're in the corner with you and your fighter, how I live my life outside of those moments is how I'm going to live my life in those moments.
I love to see how pros perform, because to me it's like, man, like, you don't understand. What pisses me off the most is when the average spectator says, this guy sucks. I'm like, do you understand the fact that he's making millions, hundreds of thousands of dollars to make it? You know how many bodies ended up dying and ended up quitting or trying and threw up and broke their ribs and went through some catastrophe to even make it there? What boxing means to you and where you're going with your track and how that can change a man's life. If you can summarize that for our viewers, I'll give you the mic. Go ahead, man.
What's up, guys? My name is Brent Christopher Jamal Hackett, aka The Technician. I'm a coach here at Ajax Boxing Club. I run the competitive program. I also have clients that I've established here throughout the years, and this is what I do 24/7.
Welcome to another episode of the Punches in Paris podcast. Today I have a special guest here. It's the first time we're shooting in a boxing gym. I decided, since we're Punches in Paris, in our podcast we talk about business, finance, men's health, men's sexual health, men's fitness health, and we want to make sure that we can bring you the content to make the best possible masculine men in the 21st century. So today I connected with a person recently. We talked on Instagram, and I decided, why not bring the podcast into the boxing ring? So we're here in Ajax, Ontario at the Ajax Boxing Club, and we have here Coach CJ. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you so much for having me, man. Thank you for taking the time to just come down and bring all your equipment into the boxing ring. I definitely feel like it's going to set a different tone.
100%.
You know what I mean, for your videos, and you got to sometimes change the environment.
100%. So, Coach, for the audience that does not know who you are, just a quick little intro, like, how you got into boxing, where you grew up, and how'd you come up here?
Well, like a lot of other things, boxing kind of just fell into my lap. My father was a pro boxer in Toronto. He started off in Cabbagetown. And, a young kid growing up wanting to be close to his father and have that connection, I started boxing out of the same gym he did as well, too. And through my journey, I started to develop my own love, not only for the sport, but for the man I was becoming at the time. And boxing had really showed me the dedication that it needed. It showed me the focus that it needed. And I always tell everybody, like, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. 100%. And it took me years to actually understand that analogy, but now that I do, I applied it to every aspect of my life. And I always tell people, boxing is just a vessel that I use to spread my gift. Like, I could have been coaching anything, but boxing just landed in my lap, landed in my soul, landed in my heart, and that's the vessel I use.
So this is your full-time gig, right? You're here full-time?
I took right during COVID, I was doing construction for about like 4 years prior to that, and when COVID hit, I would go all the way to Belleville. I would do construction from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, come back Sunday, do training Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then fly back out. I did that for about a few months, and then one day I said, you know what, I got to be all in, because you can't
dance at two weddings at the same time.
No, right.
I always tell people, I'm like, listen, if you want to be a pro at anything, you can't be dancing at two weddings. And something that I always tell men, even kind of the narrative out there is, oh, you got to have your eggs in different baskets. It's not true, because some of the people that became insanely good, they first did one thing and became the master at that. Right. And then when they had the luxury, they were able to go into different things, right? But in the beginning, you got to put upfront work into one thing. Right. And even then, that one thing might have ups and downs, but you have to be a master at it to know that you could always farm from that one thing. And there's a book I recommend always to the youngins out there. It's a book that touched my life in a big way, especially when I was coming up, when I was 23, 24. And a lot of people are trying to give me the advice, like, don't put your eggs in one basket and this, that. And the book is called The One Thing by Gary Keller, sorry. He's the owner of Keller Williams Realty. And he basically just talks about the principles of a lot of people are out there trying to tell you, like, focus on, 5 different things at the same time. I would just focus on that one thing that's in front of you. First, grow that, and then you could dabble into other shit. Right.
Well, you can't branch out from a tree that hasn't grown yet. 100%. And you got to be able to establish yourself in one space, in one community, in one area, and then once you're established in that light, you can branch off. It's true, we do live in an era where everyone says you got to have multiple things going at the same time, but then what ends up happening is you stretch yourself too thin. And then you're like 25% here, 25% over here, 25% over here. and your work is all cut up. Like, it doesn't look smooth, it doesn't look fresh, it doesn't look good, and your heart's in too many places.
Yeah, similar to boxing, right? Like, the reason I love boxing so much is that on a given night, you get to see pure justice. You get to see justice on that one night of two athletes who trained at their best, right, with their physical capabilities. Yep. And it's a game of millimeters. The guy that wins beats the other guy by a game of millimeters. It's not like a big margin, right? We have 10-9, 10-8 rounds for a reason. That's why it's scored that way, yep. Right? And the reason I like it is because there's no one can make an excuse that, oh, it was the team, it was the winger. Like, for example, in a soccer sport or football or anything else, it's a lot of factors. Whereas in boxing, it's about, hey man, you get to see the justice of one man versus one man, and you get to see who's the technician out here.
It's you versus you know, and we got a saying, it's like, you lose with the smallest things, the smallest details, you know. Who's turning over their jab a little bit more, who's doing this, who's doing that, and who's able to adjust a little bit better. Mm-hmm. You know, at the highest level, it's adjustments. Mm-hmm. It's, what is my opponent doing? How can I take that away? Yeah. What are they not doing? How can I double up what I'm doing to make it better? And that's all adjustments, you know what I mean? It's all small things. And to just add that to life, like, when you can adjust to life, then you're always capable of growing in whatever light you are and wherever you are in life, you're able to grow from there. So adjustments is key in the ring and outside of it.
Yeah. The reason I stuck to boxing is because I tell people all the time, like, even business associates that are feeling, you know, times of difficulty and this, that, and the other, I'm like, listen, the reason I was always around boxing is because this was that one sport that was able to, if I was able to take the skills that I learned in the sport and apply it in business, I only became a better businessman, right? Yeah. Because you can get knocked down, it's about how you come back up, right? Yeah. Right? This is why I love the historic fights of like Corrales, Castillo and stuff like that, where you know, it was a game where there was knockdowns, right? Yes. And you still come out after that and still could win.
Yep. Right? I mean, having that, just everyone loves the come-up story. The comeback story, you know what I mean? Yeah. Everyone likes to see the person that wasn't supposed to win, because we see a little bit of ourselves in the doubt that we put on other people. Yeah. You know what I mean? When we see somebody winning that shouldn't be winning, or we don't feel should win, a part of us is like, almost like, we look up to that. We're like, yo, if they can do it, then why can't I? You know what I mean? When you're supposed to win, you're supposed to win. Like, you did your work, you did your homework. A lot of the times what happens is, you know, the B side of the card may come out and change their entire life, even if they lose. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, look at what happened to Gervonta Davis and Pitbull Cruz. Pitbull Cruz took that fight, I think, a week of the fight, right? And that fight changed his entire trajectory of his life, of his family life, of his entire legacy, right? So you can be on the B side and get an opportunity that changes your life, win, lose, or draw, and that's a beauty of boxing. Rare, but it happens.
It happens a lot, man, a lot more than you think. Speaking of Gervonta Davis, bro, that was BS, bro. That last fight was BS for him taking that knee and getting away with it, bro. Come on, man. Boxing's got to do it better.
I'm gonna say it the way I say it to everybody else. People are looking at the wrong things. Yeah, the knee happened, then he should have been knocked down, should have been this, should have been that. But the truth of the matter is, for the first time, I wouldn't say the first time, but we saw somebody stand up against the bully. You know, Gervonta's had a long list of guys who have been just as short of him, and he's had trouble with them. Again, going back to Pitbull Cruz, he had trouble against a shorter fighter that was in his range, that was standing right in front of him. Roach, I had a feeling something was different about him, just the way he moves and the way he, like, composes himself. You know what I mean? He composed himself well in that fight. He took some of Gervonta's best punches and he was able to capitalize off of them. He was staying close enough. My coach always taught me, sometimes the closer you are to the weapon, the less dangerous it is. And he stayed right in range of Gervonta. At least he knew when that punch was coming, boom, he could hit that shoulder roll and he can counter back. So it was a great fight. I think a lot of people, again, they're only counting the whole knee. It should have been a knee, it should have been a knee. Like, just factor that out.
So you still think Roach won, though?
I believe Roach won. I think he did it. I think he did it enough to win. But we also live in boxing is also a place of you can win and still lose.
Yeah. You know, and that's what we live for. Like, as much as boxing fans talk shit about boxing, I'm like, listen, that's what boxing is. That's why we love it.
Yeah.
That's part of boxing that we love.
But there's the same fans that hated on Gervonta for taking the knee, or the same fans that bought his tickets to go and watch him, or the same fans that said Gervonta's the best. Like, I really don't go back and forth with the whole, like, he say, she say. Like, there's facts, this is a fight happened. Let's just study the facts. Yeah. Let's just study the fight and the fight itself. Okay, the knee happened and he didn't call for it, But let's look at everything else that happened during the fight that made Roach as dominant as he was, because he was dominant. You know what I mean? And we actually had to see Gervonta box and fight and try to figure this guy out and figure this out. Every time Gervonta threw a punch, Roach is like, nah, not today. You know what I mean? Like, you saw him, he's like, no, not today. Like, there's a decision that fighters make before the fight starts. And I think Andre Ward spoke on this. He said, no matter what he hits me with, he's not hurting me. Like, you got to make that decision outside of the ring. You got to make that decision outside of the arena. You got to make that decision, you know what I mean? Like, you got to make it up here before it happens in here. And you could tell, like, Roach is like, nah, it's not happening today. You know, and he proved it. And shout out to him, shout out to his whole team. Like, they knew what they're doing. I also believe, like, those two fought each other in the amateurs, which sometimes I consider not a factor, but the only reason why I consider this one a factor is because they've definitely known each other a lot closer than what a lot of people think.
Yeah, I also think, though, it also showed that Gervonta should have stuck to Calvin Ford, maybe, right? The Calvin Ford wasn't in his wasn't in his corner this time, right?
I believe he was. I think
he came late, but he
just wasn't number one.
There's some beef there, yeah. There was some beef.
And again, you know, unless you're, I always tell people there's conversations happening in rooms that we're not in, you know, and there's a lot of money on the table that we don't see, and there's a lot of things happening behind the scene that you don't see. As a pro coach, as someone who's coached professionals, there's a lot of things that go on that nobody else sees that are factors. Was it beef? Was it a miscommunication? Was it this, that, and third? We don't know. You can only speculate at the end of the day. And again, I just stick with the facts. Yeah, he was there, but he wasn't really in the corner. Who knows what it was about? But the point is, you know, things turned out the way they did, and it's going to be interesting to see how it moves forward.
So you said growing up, your dad was a pro boxer right here in Canada?
Yeah, he was a pro boxer. He was fighting out of Cabbagetown. I don't know how many fights he had, but he definitely made a name for himself, because sometimes I'll go out to, like, amateur shows, and people, like, older heads will look at me and be like, yeah. Okay. And they'll look at me and they'll be like, is your father Bobby Hackett or something like that? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, you look just like him, or you walk just like him. And it's interesting how, like, the legacy still kind of, like, follows down. Yeah. But that's the boxing community in Toronto. Like, it's.
But how's your relationship with your father?
It's interesting because I initially wanted to start boxing to, like, build a relationship. And then you realize that you got to build a relationship yourself with boxing. You know what I mean? I didn't find what I was looking for, but I found what I needed. And I think that's the most important thing about my personal journey through the sport. And so I became the coach I never had. I became the father I never had. I became things within myself.
Are you a father too?
I'm a father as well too.
Nice.
So I just one. Yeah. So I became things that I never had, made my mistakes along the way, and I learned from them. And so, you know, doing that and having that opportunity to be where I am today is why I put so much heart into it. You know what I mean?
Is your dad involved in your boxing coach life right now, or no?
No.
Oh, really?
No, I don't think he even knows what I do.
Really?
I don't think he knows how deep I am in it.
Oh, really?
You know what I mean? But one day he'll either watch this video or, like, randomly be walking down the street and, like, be like, yo, we know, and you know what I mean? Like, it'll just randomly happen. You know what I mean? So going back to men's health, like, you got to be, as a man, you got to be able to pave your own way and walk your own way as if your father's not alive. Because a lot of times we do things to appease our parents or appease the people around us, and we stray away from what makes us authentic. And I think what happens with a lot of men these days is that we don't have the authenticity, we don't have the guidance that we need. And when you don't have the guidance, you end up doing just like whatever. You know what I mean? I always tell people, especially dudes, you gotta have your purpose. You gotta have your trajectory. You gotta have your goal, because you're gonna have a lot of things that pull you in so many different directions. You gotta have that one thing that keeps you on track.
Yeah, I've been on my own since 17, but before that, like, I grew up with my father and my parents, and I love my father, man. He was a tough guy, you know, tough upbringing, really rough, and I love it because he cared. And a lot of things he said, like, I would say 95% of things he said are true. Are things that became true eventually at some.
They weren't true in the moment. You were like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, 100%. And then eventually you're like, you know what? You go through this or that, and you're like, you know what? My dad was right. And he just genuinely wanted you to not make mistakes. And then there's things that he said that weren't true, and there's things that I didn't want that he had in his life. For example, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur because I saw him being a great company man, right? And he was a really good worker, worked his entire life for these rich guys, you know, in the pharmaceutical business, and ended up getting nothing at the end. I was like, I don't want that, man. Yeah. I don't want that corporate life, because he's a good worker. I got my work ethic from him and my grandfather, both workaholics. But at the end of it, I always tell people that are watching or anybody, I'm like, I'd rather have a fruit cart stand making 60 grand on my own than making 200 grand for somebody else, right? And this is something I tell people, like, you can make your own economy within an economy, right? It's just be willing to, how much are you willing to get up every morning, and how much harder are you willing to work every single day, and then eventually it's a compound effect, right? It's a compound effect of all the years of hard work. Right?
It is, and people don't realize too, sorry to cut you off, is the autonomy that comes with running your own businesses, and the time that you have for yourself is even more important, because when you're able to sit with yourself and collect your thoughts and be kind of introspective within yourself and learn about yourself, the more you know about yourself, the more your business grows, because you're able to do things and put yourself in positions that are uncomfortable, but growth needs that. You know what I mean? And I always tell people I'd rather make, 30, 40,000 on my own terms than, like you said, 100,000 for someone else's terms, because just the time that comes with it. Like, I'm able to do whatever it is that I like on like a Saturday afternoon at 4 p.m. and run a podcast. You know what I mean? Like you can't trade that for anything. And in this world, like, when you're able to have your own time and you know what you're doing with it, you're able to really build something. Because on the flip side is, people want their own time, but then they don't know what to do with it. You got to be able to sit with yourself, and mainly just be able to sit with yourself and not be distracted. Really focus on what it is that you want. And if you don't know what it is that you want, that's okay too. But figuring it out and trying different things and be willing to fail and be willing to have people talk down on you and doubt you. Those are two of the biggest brick walls that we face when we start to walk our own path. We're on our path, we're feeling good, and then all of a sudden we get ridiculed and we get this and that. And if you're not solid within yourself, if you're not solid within who you are and the decision that you make, that'll knock you off course. You know what I mean? And it happens to the best of us. But I always remember where I started. I got this tatted down in Colombia, and it says, remember where you started, and you are your only limit. You know what I mean? Because on your path, you're gonna get pulled in so many directions that if you forget where you're going, and you get those moments where you can't even see in front of you, you're gonna forget why you started. You know what I mean? It's easy to quit at those times.
So, what's your schedule like when you run this boxing gym here at the Ajax Boxing Club? Like, when do you wake up? When do you get started? How many students are you teaching? How many pros do you have on the roster? And what are some of your goals? What you want to achieve out of boxing? I'm curious to know. If you like this episode and like our content, please don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share our channel. Now let's get back in the video.
My goal is simple, is just to take it to the highest level that I can take it to with who I can take it with. I only want to attract people that want to take it there, that are fearless, that are okay with being pushed up against a wall, that are okay with being challenged, fighters that are okay to go down into the 12th round, you know what I mean, swimming and doing what we need to do, because those are the moments that I live for. I always try to live as present as possible in my life, no matter what I'm doing, and as calm as possible, because in those high intensity moments when you're in the corner with you and your fighter, how I live my life outside of those moments is how I'm gonna live my life in those moments. You know what I mean? So that's where I want to take it to the highest.
And right now you're training group classes here, or one-on-ones and a combination?
Group classes only on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we have the competitive program. But the majority of the time I'm here during the day. I have different clients that I train. Some just want to do boxing just for the fun of it, as a health way to keep themselves in shape. I also have other fighters that want to develop themselves. I always tell people, you stick around me long enough, I'm going to treat you the way you want to be. I'm going to treat you the version of yourself that you see. I'm going to talk to that person. And it's tough, because I'll hold you accountable the same way I want to be held accountable for myself. So I probably train around, I'd say 30, 40 people, during the week. And then I have my fighters that come to me all the time as well too. So I saw some of them right now. So they're getting ripped, bro. These guys are getting ripped.
So
those two guys one guy is getting ready for a show in like 3 or 4 months. So, we got time, but we don't got time. And then the other guy wants to compete in a few months as well too. So a part of my job is to learn how a fighter thinks and learn what motivates them, learn what inspires them. Because in moments in the corner, a coach needs to know how to spark you. It's how to look at you and say something that pulls something out of you that then can be turned into the fight. And in order to do that, you got to know how to develop people. You got to know how to develop yourself. The better I know myself, the better I know my people, right? And like I said, the more that I grow, the more people grow around me. Like I say, stay around me long enough, you'll get better. Because I hold myself to that standard, and I'm okay with looking a certain way or looking crazy or looking too overly this or overly that. Like, that comes with it. You know, they always say heavy is the head that wears the crown. You know, so I'm fine with putting the pressure on myself.
Okay, so you're signed to boxing for life, is what you're saying?
For life. I didn't do this to do it half-assed.
Yeah. So you're in this for life. So I'm going to be seeing you around in around the events out in Toronto and beyond from there.
Like I said, they're going to see who's here 10 years from now, 100%. You know, and I didn't do this to just take it to this level or that level. Like, I'm going to attract such success around me that it's going to be hard for people not to see and to not bring about what it is that I want to bring to fruition. Because the way you see it and the way you speak it, so will become.
How can people that are watching, like, you know, just an average man that's just like, you know, a business guy or whatever, how can boxing change his life? Like, if he incorporates getting one-on-one lessons with a boxing trainer. I can speak on behalf of that just because I've been part of it. I've been boxing for some time now, like consistently for 6 years. And for me, it's done a lot. Like, the investment I put into boxing paid me way more in my real life because
Yeah, for sure.
because the grit that requires to box, even just because the sessions I do are pretty much the same session a pro does, right? Like, I do the same type of training, right? Like, Stevie would push me the same way, or Coach Salman would push me the same way. All these guys would push me the same way. And buddy, it's a hard-ass sport, bro. Like, I love to see how pros perform because to me it's like, man, like, you don't understand. I tell people when they're watching these boxers, what pisses me off the most is when the average spectator says, this guy sucks. I'm like, do you understand the fact that he's making millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars to make it? You know how many bodies ended up dying and ended up quitting or trying and threw up and broke their ribs and went through some catastrophe to even make it there? To say he sucks is like such a wrong way to look at it because one guy's got to win, right? Whether you watch Bivol or Better Biev or whatever, I've seen these guys train, bro. It's insane, right? It's insane. I seen Floyd train, right? That guy was hitting the heavy bag, the 200-pound bag, at age 40 when he's getting ready for Connor's fight for 1 hour 30 minutes straight without no breaks, right? And the people that don't know, like, the average person can't even do it for 3 minutes, bro. The average fighter does it for 30 minutes and he's done, right? After throwing 1-2s on that, he's done. You have to admire, like, these guys that actually, like, I always tell people, I think boxing is the hardest sport that exists.
I agree.
I don't care what somebody says, this is my statement, and I've played a lot of sports. I played soccer professionally, I played cricket back in the day when I was younger. Buddy, the amount of grit that boxing takes out of you, it's insane, man.
Just going back to your question, like, what would boxing do for men? It'll expose parts of yourself that you haven't developed yet.
100%.
And I think
That's a beautiful way to put it, bro.
I think a lot of people don't realize, it's a physical sport, but 99.9% of the time, it's a mental sport. It'll expose if you're a quitter, it'll expose if you half-ass, it'll expose how dedicated you are. It'll also expose what you are willing to sacrifice. You know, one of my pros right now, like, what he sacrifices outside of the ring to do what he does, it's the reason why every time he steps through that door, he gives me 100% of what he is.
What's his name?
And it's my boy, right? It's my boy Austin. Like, what he sacrificed outside of the ring, like, there's no question about it, you know. And I only met him in January. Like, me and him have only been rocking for like 3 months. But like I said, you know, you attract what you are, and I'm 100% in, and he's 100% in.
And how many fights he has as a pro now?
He has 2 now. He has 2. He has a very heavy combat background. Doing Muay Thai, I think he's done like 70 or 80 fights, something like that. He's traveled all around the world and done fights. So I know a lot of people haven't heard of him, but just give us time. They're going to hear about it. Yeah, they're going to hear about him, and they're going to see what this boy is about. And I don't say that lightly. And so, you know, as we continue up the mountain, it's always going to be a thing of, you know, just proving ourselves what we are. It has nothing to do with anybody else. You know, like I said, for the people that just come in and want to do it as a sport and something to get them in physical shape, you'll get in physical shape, but you'll also figure out who you are mentally as well too. You know, where your inspiration comes from, where your motivation comes from. And like I said, going back to what I said, one of my jobs is to learn that, is to figure that out. You know, you got to be able to know why your fighter is fighting. Because if you don't know, when they need to fight, if you don't know how to bring that out of them, you're not going to get the results that you want. You know, and so people got to understand, like, even if you're just coming here to get into shape, I'm going to get you into shape, but I will also grow you mentally. I will also push you mentally. I'll also make you do things that are uncomfortable. I've made fighters read books. I've made them watch certain podcasts, listen to certain content, because outside of here, your mind's got to be as sharp as your body.
Yeah. So for me, like I always say, like when I'm boxing, it taught me things about my body that I didn't know that I had. Would you say that's true? Right? Like I've been around the gym, for example, lifting weights, and I always tell bodybuilders, I'm like, bodybuilding's like, it's kind of gay. Lifting weights, bro, it's so like, I do it still just to maintain myself, but I do light weights, right? So I'm doing light weights, maximum reps.
I know you're a big dude.
No, but I was way bigger, bro. I'm lean down. I used to be 200 plus, ripped when I was younger. Like I did the bodybuilding thing back in the day, but I never took any like steroids, nothing, all natural. I don't even take protein shakes, bro. I just eat food, bro. Yeah, man, just food, bro. That's what. Like I'm 35. I don't look 35. I'm sure I don't look 35.
It's the best way to do it. You know?
I'm just coming off a nasty divorce, coming off all this stuff. You don't even know how much stress I take on a daily basis.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that added weight on you.
But I'll be honest, it's like how Teddy Atlas says. It didn't matter what was happening in the world. It didn't matter what you were going through. Boxing was there for me. That's what he says. Teddy Atlas says boxing was the justice that kept me sane.
It was your outlet. It was the reason why you continued. There was a reason why you could even push through, like, you know, the divorce. You know what I mean? And just a sport alone, and that's why it's important for fighters. And this is just a message to fighters to have a gym, have a coach that really cares about you. Because I'll tell you right now, the other side of not having a coach that doesn't care about you or doesn't care about how you train and what you do outside of it or this and the third, like, you'll see it inside the ring. You know what I mean? And I know how I do what I do. My fighters know that I'm down for them, you know, inside the ring and outside of it. And so that's why we can carry ourselves the way we do with purpose, and carry ourselves the way we do inside fights, and carry ourselves the way we do at tournaments, because they know, like, yeah, I'm their coach, but I'm down for them, you know. And then you got to find a place, and for every fighter, a place could be for growth, or it could be for community, it could be for whatever it may be. You got to find your spot, you know, because it's very important for you to have a place where you can walk in and feel like you belong.
Yeah, well, that's how this podcast was born, right? I was going through my challenges in life, and you know, I never let a challenge come to me. I'm actually thankful for everything I went through, by the way. Believe it or not, I'm always thankful, right? Because you can choose to dwell, or you can choose to learn from it and use it to your advantage and to your life, because it's at the end of the day, it's your story, right? And people remember your story the way you take that pen and write it. So what happened is, whatever I went through, it doesn't matter. When I first had the fake allegations on me or this, that, I spent that one night in jail. So I'm in there, I'm like, you know what, I'm in that 6x6, and I'm like, what do I do from here, you know? Right. So first thing I did is I come out the next day, when I got released, I was doing like 200 push-ups at night. My Lord's like, why is there veins popping all over you? Yeah. So how this thing was born was, come out of jail the next morning, and I basically call my staff, because I own a construction business. I'm like, yo, we're gonna put a boxing gym together in my basement. Yeah. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, we're gonna put it in 2 days. So that studio that you see, it's put together in 2 days, 1.5 days.
It's very nice.
So
we gotta come down there next.
Thank you. Yeah, well, of course, man. Anytime. If you're welcome anytime, just let me know ahead of time. Sure. So essentially what happened is, I built that studio up, and first what I did was, I'm like, you know what? When I was inside, I saw a lot of other men suffering in there, like just because of a woman or whatever, and they're letting them get defeated. And I'm like, yo, this can't be masculinity today. So I'm like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna build this boxing gym. So I bought all the equipment, Title Boxing, Rival, I have everything. I got the double end bag, got the heavy bag, got the uppercut bag, got the speed bag, everything. I even have the reflex bag and the Cobra bag. And then I built the platform, and I just started training men. It was just word of mouth. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna give back, because I feel like this is not a good thing for men to go through, especially when you take care of a woman, you pay her bills, and then she tries to do this to you when it's time to go. It's like, it happens to a lot of men, by the way. It's something very common in North American society. So a lot of guys just word of mouth said, hey, there's this guy Munib, he's doing this, because I have a big network, and you know, average guys, middle class guys, with like guys on the street, I'm like, you know, free boxing lessons. So I did this on my own time, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. I'm training guys, multimillionaires, to very, very successful people that I can't say their names, but very, very successful people are part of the program that I started. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to give whatever a man's going through, I'm going to give them the gift of boxing as an outlet for them to work out and let it all out on the bag. And we did pad work. We do crazy pad work. And while I'm training them, these guys started, talking to me about, hey, yo, I got fake charges on me. My ex did this, my ex did that. This is not fair. And I was like, yo, this is sad, And then I went through a fake situation again where I was planted a breach charge for nothing, which recently just got dropped in a court. And it was all deliberately done to screw me and my reputation. When I went again to the jail cell, I was like, okay, when I come out, a lot of guys were like, man, the way you talk, you need to give this message out there. Because not a lot of men have the balls or the courage to say the kind of stuff I say. Right? I say a lot of, edgy stuff, but I say the truth. I'd rather say it like that, versus most men don't want to say that because they're scared of what's going to happen. Especially when they see when a guy like Tate goes out and speaks and the world come crashing. So I'm like, I don't care. So I just bought all this equipment up. And at night I would study how to do video and this, that. I don't come from this background. And then we just started this thing. And our goal at the end of the day is to empower the 21st century men. And boxing's a big catalyst of what we incorporate into what we're talking about, because I encourage men all the time, like, listen, get into a boxing gym. Get your kids into a boxing gym. For what it's worth, you're gonna get more rewards from what you invest into.
Right, and that's a crazy story. And think about it, you only spent, what was it, one night in jail. Imagine three times. The 3 times you spent one night in jail.
3 times 1 night each time.
Right. Think about, you can create all that just from spending one night in jail. Imagine the guys who are spending, weeks, months, years. And so you got to be able to understand, like, you either can go one or two ways. You can either decide to change your life in that moment and build from it, or you can continue going down the rabbit hole and not develop yourself. And it's easier to go one way or another. It takes a really sound mind, because you're not in the environment of growth. You're in the environment of entrapment, which is why your cell is the size that it is.
6x6 in a concrete thing like this with no air conditioning or heating. And I did both times. I went one in the winter and I went in the summer. So I was in extreme heat.
So my point exactly, brother. So you're able to develop yourself in a place where you're not supposed to develop. And so that's why things come out the way they have, because you grew from a place where you're not supposed to grow. And I think that's what a lot of men and women as well too got to understand. Like, that's where you grow in life, where you're not supposed to, in the trials and tribulations of your journey. You felt your purpose out there, in there, I should say. And your purpose is now being able to put on this platform, come down to a place like this and be able to share it. That's what people are going to take from it.
Yeah. Well, I don't want any pity. I just, like, what I tell men, and this is my thing, as bad as it sounds, I think you should go to jail. For a lot of men, because there's so much noise in the real world. We live in a prison anyways. We live in a world that's like a prison today, right? So might as well go in a real prison, have your cell phone taken away from you, have your rights taken away from you, be willing to be in front of a toilet, a sink, and a concrete bed. And that will teach you so much about your life, and you'll have time to reflect, and you'll have time to actually ponder on what you're going to do next. And this is why some people come out of jail and they become really successful. Because they're like, yo, I was in there, I was reading books, I did stuff that I didn't do normally. I was able to reflect on what I want, right? There's a lot of guys that became ultra successful. So people might think, like, a lot of these women that are putting their husbands in jail or whatever, that it's actually ruining them. It's actually making them better men when they come out. Like, and God has its way of working, man. I don't know how people don't understand God, but I generally believe you can't even be a man if you don't believe in God, right? Because you got to believe in something bigger than you. That's part of being a man, right? If you're worshiping a man or you're worshiping idols or anything like that, then you're not really a masculine man, because you are inspired by a faulty creation, right? So the way I say it is like, and this is why Islam has a big role in my life, right? Being a Muslim man, fasting, doing all the things that we do, it all that keeps you in discipline. So when I was in that cell, I was doing prayers, I was doing push-ups, and I was punching the concrete wall where the guards even came, like, yo, you're gonna break your knuckles. I'm like, yo, I'm punching. And that's how punches and prayers came together. Right. Do you get what I'm saying? Right. So I'm in there and I'm like, what do I name my thing? Makes sense. I'm like, yo, you know what? Punches and prayers. Makes sense. And that's how this thing was born.
And just to build off that, like, we can have physical jail cells, and we can also have mental ones. 100%. And a lot of the times is you don't even have to go to jail to realize. If you just look at your life and look at the patterns that develop in your life, you can realize that you've been in a mental cell for years. And in order to break out of that, you got to, like you said, you got to be able to tone it down and come back into yourself and ask yourself certain questions. Yeah, you did it in jail. Some people have to do it outside of it. You know what I mean? Like for me, my development happened outside of it. I never sat in a cell or anything like that, but I've been in situations in my life where I put myself in this mental cell, and I had to ask myself, like, okay, what can I learn from this? Or how did I get myself in the situation? Or what did I not do? You know what I mean? And you got to be able to understand that a lot of times our cell is already up here. You know what I mean? And we got to be able to ask ourselves the right questions in order to break out of that. And in that, we can be able to inspire something new and inspire a different version of ourselves. It may take a very long time in order for you to cultivate a mentality outside of what you're pre-programmed, you know, as you grow up. But what I've learned is everything happens the way you want it to if you just decide it, you know. And for myself, I develop my mind outside of the gym. I develop my body the same way I develop my mind, and I was able to create myself, you know, create this. And I always tell everybody else around me, like, you have more power in yourself than you think. And you've proven that through your story, and I've proven that through my story. And it's great to have a platform like this where we can kind of go back and forth and be able to share that, you know.
The thing is, I just want to normalize men's issues, right? Like, no one really speaks up for men, right, today. No one really speaks up for the struggle of a man today. And if they do, they don't know how to address it. Like, for example, there's guys that, so what happens to me is I get about 12 messages a week, average, 12 to 20, of different guys that go through a divorce or like a fake allegation or this, that, and people link them to me. And when I talk to the guy, the first thing I say is, hey man, chill, it's all good. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm your brother, it's okay, chill. And he's like, man, everybody else is like stressing me out. They're like, oh brother, are you stressed? So even these guys that are trying to help them, they don't understand, like, you're making it a bigger problem than it is in the guy's head. And if that guy doesn't understand it, he's like, yo, I didn't do anything, I just want to understand, somebody can understand. I'm like, it's okay that this happened. You're not alone, it's okay. And then what I do is I plug them into our group. We have this, like, our own Discord channel. And then there's a lot of other men that welcome him and say, hey, look, I went through this. And so when he gets into a community of men that are out there to tell him, like, hey, my story is this. And then he's like, yo, my story's not even that bad. There's guys that go through some serious stuff in this. There's guys in my group, I can't say their names, but they had charges like fake rape charges, where the ex actually claimed that the father raped the daughter. Like, imagine how low you have to be. And then the daughter had to go in court and say, no, this was all a bullshit thing. My mother lied. But the guy did 8 months because of that.
Right, because it's too late after like,
right, because the system is like, you're guilty until proven innocent. So he goes to jail because the moment you get a rape charge, it's like, okay, whatever. And then the daughter says, no, this was not true. This was all BS. But it's sad to see these women would go that low, which is okay. But no one's there for these men. There's no platform. So one of the things I did is when I started this, I was looking for saying, hey, where is there a platform? And I couldn't find any platform. Right? Not that I needed it. So I'm like, okay, I'll create the platform. Right? And I wanted to give back, and that's my fight, right? Everybody has to choose. Everybody can pick their fight. I promised to God when I was in that cell the second time, like, till the day I die, I'll be doing this. Till the day I die, I'll be doing this for men. So and it's an open invitation for any man.
You're all into.
I'm all in. I don't get into something. If I do it all in, or I don't do half-ass.
Yeah, you can't. Because then the product, the finished product will be half-ass.
Yeah, like for example, I'm in boxing. I'm gonna be in boxing for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Right?
It'll keep you young. It'll keep you young.
I know guys that are 80 years old that are still boxing.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have an age where you can start. It doesn't have an age where you can think. Obviously, if you want to compete, then it's a different story.
No, I'm not competing. No. Those days are gone.
Yeah. Boxing always, like I said earlier, boxing shows you parts of yourself that you didn't know. And so it's important to note that each and every single time that anybody starts boxing, you know, you'll be able to find a part of yourself that you didn't really know you had, or parts of yourself that were missing. You know what I mean?
Look at guys like Teddy Atlas, right? He's still involved. Look at guys like Bob Arum.
He'll always be involved.
Look at Bob Arum. He doesn't need to do this, but at 94, the guy's sitting there ringside with his fighters.
It's like what else are they gonna do? You know what I mean? Like what else do they know? What other occupation can they possibly? Like boxing is all they do. And going back to my earlier point, it's like you got to know yourself and why you do it, because at the end of the day, that's gonna be the legacy people remember. You know, the passion that they have. No one's ever gonna question the coach like Teddy. You know what I mean? Nobody questions the older coaches from back in the day who had it. You know, it was their passion, whether they created a champion or not. You know, and so I always like to view myself as no matter what, no matter how high I go, no matter where it takes me, like nobody's ever second guessed what I bring to the table and the passion and everything that I put in. Because at the end of the day, that's what people remember, how you impact them, you know?
Who's your favorite boxer of all time? If you had to pick one, then that's it. You get one.
I get one.
You get one. You have to be definitive on that one.
I'd have to say my favorite boxer of all time, probably Bernard Hopkins.
Oh, really, eh?
Yeah, he was one of the first guys that I watched from like the early 90s when I was a kid. I remember my dad was watching it, and he was fighting. I think he was fighting Tito Trinidad.
Yeah.
And I remember that fight. That was the one fight that I remember when I was young.
He's Muslim too, you know that, right? He's a Muslim guy?
Yeah, he converted, right?
In jail, yeah.
He converted in jail.
Yeah.
And he's the guy who started boxing in jail.
100%. That's another story. Look,
Yeah.
in jail he learned boxing and he came out to clean his life up.
Right. And so, you know, guys that, like, it's always a story that's why boxing always tells stories. You know what I mean? Like, you got to be able to sell the story, and then the fighter is almost like secondary, because people want to hear the story.
And Bernard is fit. He's still fit, bro, for his age.
Oh, yeah,
But the guy still wears freaking tight shirts.
He was one of those guys that would do a 12-round fight, not get hit too much, go back to his hotel, sit in a cold bath, and go train the next day. Like, he wasn't.
But he didn't cheat. He never drank soda, never ate, never was off.
So again, you know, your body treats you as well as you treat it when it's young. You know what I mean? And he's a good representation of that.
Yeah, he invented the shoulder roll. I think Mayweather took it from him and then worked on it. But
I think some people disagree with him on that one.
oh, who invented it?
Yeah, it's not that it was like invented. It was a style that was invested back in the day, because a lot of the older fighters, a lot of the older boxers would carry their hand a little low, and they started rolling the shoulder and bringing it back. Like, I don't like to say everything was invented, because everything was already around. Do you know what I mean? Things were just like coined and named, and certain people are hooked up to it. But it's something that's been in the game for a long time. You know what I mean? And so, certain things, certain moves, certain aesthetic, it's always been there.
What's your favorite boxing movie of all time?
Boxing movie?
Mine's is Prize Fighter by Russell Crowe. I don't know if you've seen it. It's an amazing movie, man. It talks about the history of boxing when it started in England, how it was just a sport where white people would bet on people fight, slaves would fight, and they would bet on it.
They would go like 100 rounds back in the day. Like, they would go until someone dies. My favorite boxing movie, I mean, I remember the Rocky movie so vividly. I'd have to say Rocky 2. My boy Austin's like this. Yeah, you got it.
I haven't watched Rocky yet.
I'd have to say Rocky.
I haven't even watched Rocky
You
yet.
haven't watched any Rocky?
Never. I just hear. I haven't watched any Rocky yet.
Those are classic ones. You know what I mean? Those are classic ones. But I definitely like the Creed series, even though I haven't watched the third one.
But man, the fighting is fake in Creed. For a boxing guy who loves boxing, the way the action is done, it was so fake, bro.
I mean, he's also not a real boxer.
I know, but like,
you know what I mean? So
even when he's doing this, when they're doing the style like this, what's it called? When you do like this, what's the name for this? When they
call it cross guard.
cross guard, yeah, like you and he's beating him. That's not how. There's no reflex on the punches. I'm like, that's not. You can't do that in real life.
Yeah, I get it, but when like, you gotta almost like know what you're watching. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like, I don't expect the guy to like look perfect doing the move or anything like that, but I enjoy it for what it is.
Southpaw was good. You watch Southpaw?
Yeah, Southpaw was with who? Southpaw was with who?
It was with Jake. I think Jake played that movie.
Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah. He was good.
I think I watched that one. But yeah, like, you know, the boxing movies inspired a lot of boxers themselves. A lot of people that box now were inspired by, you know.
Mark Wahlberg was good too. The fighter, Mark Wahlberg with.
There's another boxing movie. I think it was called The Hurricane or something like that. And he was, you should watch that one. He was a boxer from, I believe, back in the 50s or 60s, and he was wrongfully accused about raping a white girl or something like that. And he went to jail for like a few years, and he came back out or something. I can't remember exactly.
Mike Tyson was falsely accused too.
Yeah. That was I remember that movie. That was another old one that I watched.
What's your favorite documentary? I know mine. What's your favorite boxing documentary?
Favorite boxing documentary?
Mine is What's My Name, Muhammad Ali, HBO.
I don't think I watched that one.
It's an amazing documentary, bro. It's amazing. It's about Ali's whole story, and it's done like so professional. Yeah. Where how he started as Cassius Clay.
I have a book on Muhammad Ali that I read. Muhammad Ali was
different guy.
Well, he was great, not for what he did in the ring, but what he represented outside the ring. Right? It was the time of right. It was the time of you know, a lot of segregation, a lot of this and that, and for him to be doing what he was doing at that time and speaking the way he was, like, Muhammad Ali is bigger because of what he did outside of things, similar to Manny Pacquiao. You know, Manny Pacquiao is big for more of what he did for his country and outside of it, and also what he did in the ring. You know, we have few and far between fighters like that can really change boxing and also change the world outside of boxing.
Yeah, Muhammad Ali, to this day, even like, doesn't matter how racist of a guy he is, he even if you ask like the most racist white guy, he'll still say my favorite fighter is Muhammad Ali. Like I've experimented that. Like, I'll be in the gym with the most like douchebag of a white dude. Like, yo, who's your favorite fighter? Bro, Ali. And then he'll talk about how Ali reunited everything, and he fought. I'm like, but you're a racist piece of shit. But they'll still love Ali. Like Ali's one of those characters that they just have to give him as the GOAT, right?
Yeah. And I also think too, like a lot of people they just hear the name Muhammad Ali, so they associate boxing with the great Muhammad Ali. But there's a lot of other greats before and obviously after Muhammad Ali. But, you know, it's one of those things where people that know boxing, you know what I mean? And regardless of color or race, whatever the case may be, like, the sport has always been about who fights the best and how they come together and how their stories clash.
Who's your current favorite active boxer right now? Like, and that's mainstream pro that's out there. Who's your favorite current boxer and why? Mine is Jerome Ennis. I love Jerome Ennis. I think he's very underrated. People don't understand what the skill this guy possesses, and the way he switches from southpaw to orthodox and back. It's like
now my top. He's probably one of my top 5 is Caleb Plant. And another one is Devin Haney. Another one is Gervonta.
You like Devin Haney, eh?
Yeah, I'm a fan. Yeah. I think he's, aside from all the scandal and this, that, and the third, if you watch a lot of his fights, he's got very good, and it's going to go against completely what happened with Ryan Garcia. But most of the time, he's much more defensively responsible than he was against Ryan Garcia.
I just like the personality. I don't like his personality.
That's fine. That's why you watch him, right? Like, you'll watch him because you want to. Same thing with Mayweather. Like, a lot of people didn't like.
No, I love Mayweather. I'm a huge Mayweather fan.
No, I'm saying, but there's a lot of people that didn't like Mayweather, and that's why they watched him.
He's my greatest of all time.
Whether you like them or hate them, when they fight, you're gonna watch, and that's what they bank on, right? So, I just watch it for the skill and what I can learn from it and how I can teach it to my students, right? So.
Devin Haney. Who else?
He's one of my favorite.
Caleb Plant. You said.
Plant. I also, Andre Ward is in my top 5 as well too.
But he's not active no more.
He's fighting, but he's definitely in my top 5. I do like what Gervonta Davis brings to the table in terms of like his charisma and his power and his stopping power. I think a lot of the times, as he continues his career, I don't think we're gonna see guys that stand up to him a little bit more. You know, especially as he gets older and he's gonna rely on his power a little bit too much. Guys are gonna get really comfortable and be like, okay, cool, I just gotta be able to take his punch. And they're gonna go with that. I like Teofimo, just like his style, his relaxed style.
Crazy footwork, man.
Yeah. There's certain things you can't teach.
That's dancing, bro. This guy, at that point, he's dancing.
You can't teach.
Bro, he's moonwalking.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
And again, you can't teach.
You can't teach that.
Something like that. You know,
That's born. That's natural talent.
I always like styles make fights. I'm a styles make fights type of guy. My top 5 always changes every 3 months. You know, the more I study this one fight, I'm like, oh, I like this. Now you know what I mean? So I'm always kind of shifting through. But I always say, like, you know, there's certain things that I can learn from every fighter, every single one. You know, that's me. You know, I'll take something from every single fighter, and I'll be able to dissect it, watch it, and see how I can learn it, see how I can teach it.
What will be your message for our viewers? One last message before we end this, about what boxing means to you and where you're going with your track and how that can change a man's life. If you can summarize that for our viewers before we end the podcast, I'll give you the mic. Go ahead, man. What can boxing do for a young man? A young man that's watching us right now.
I can only speak on myself. I found my purpose. And I found a direction that I can move toward, and I move toward it like a train on tracks, you know. And anytime, as it goes back to my original point, you know, you got to be able to find your purpose, and boxing will help you find that, because the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. Whatever you put into boxing in the ring is the way you're going to do all those small little things outside of it. And I think what men have to understand, especially in this day and age, with all the distractions around them, they got to be able to get into a place where they can silence the noise and figure out where you want to take your life, and figure out where you want to be able to be on a path that'll take you to X, Y, and Z. Because that's where we make mistakes with a lot of other things in our life. Like, if you don't have purpose, then you're going to make decisions on anything and feel like you're not going anywhere. When you have a purpose, then every decision you make after that is is my decision taking me closer or further away from myself? You know what I mean? So that's what it is. You know, boxing helped me find my purpose, and I try to help people find their purpose through my ability to teach them boxing. Like I said, this is just the vessel that I use. You know what I mean? It's a lot more than boxing for me. So why people think I'm crazy, I'm different, and everything like that, and I'm fine with that. Okay. But that's what you get when you train with me, you know? So yeah, that's it.
Well, CJ, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate that you gave us the opportunity. Thank you so much. With that being said, guys, thank you for watching another episode. Again, comment, like, subscribe, and share our channel, and we'll see you in the next episode. At this point, peace out.